That Christmas party was supposed to be perfect, until I stood quietly outside the cracked door. My name is Jenna. I am 32 years old, but that night felt like the end of a lifetime of trying to belong somewhere. As I raised my hand to knock, I suddenly froze, because I clearly heard a toast celebrating my absence coming from the familiar voices of my parents, along with the malicious addition from my older sister. The complete lack of objection from any of the invited guests in that living room, together with their silent agreement, created a chilling feeling that finally made me realize my true position within this toxic family circle. My mom laughed loudly while raising her glass. "It's absolutely great that Jenna didn't come today." My sister immediately chimed in with a vicious tone to support them. "No one likes having her here anyway." Instead of pushing the door open and making a loud scene in front of everyone, I calmly placed the expensive gift box down on the porch with absolute decisiveness, as if extinguishing the very last hope I had for our family bond. I turned around and walked back to my car in complete silence without shedding a single tear, because my anger had been replaced by a cold determination. If you're watching this story, leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from and what time it is where you are, so I can see how far my story has reached. 3 months before that fateful Christmas night, the real fracture in our family began when a fiery argument erupted right inside the living room of this very house. I originally purchased this luxurious property in the Dundee neighborhood to provide a comfortable retirement space for my parents so they could enjoy their later years in peace. However, they completely enabled my older sister Shannon to move into the guest wing with them so she could live entirely off my personal finances without making any effort of her own. On that specific afternoon, the cosmetics company owned by Shannon was standing on the absolute brink of bankruptcy due to her consistently terrible management habits and excessive corporate spending. My parents immediately summoned me to the house to aggressively pressure me into pouring my personal savings into her business to rescue her failing situation before the bank intervened. I calmly requested a thorough review of her accounting books before making any financial decisions regarding her unstable business venture. After spending an hour looking at the disorganized numbers, I quickly realized her company was a bottomless financial black hole that could never be salvaged by a simple cash injection. The records showed ridiculous expenses for luxury client dinners and unnecessary travel, while the core revenue continued to plummet week after week. I firmly refused to throw my hard-earned money out the window for a business that had absolutely no chance of survival under her incompetent leadership. Mom glared at me with deep disappointment while raising her voice in fierce defense of her favorite child. "You have more than enough money in your corporate accounts to save your sister from losing everything she has built over the last 2 years." I maintained my composure while sliding the disastrous financial documents back across the glass coffee table toward them. "I will not fund a failing business just because we share the same bloodline, when the accounting clearly shows massive irresponsible spending." My logical refusal was met with severe and immediate backlash from my parents, who completely refused to accept the reality of the situation. They instantly changed their previously welcoming attitude toward me and harshly berated me for being a cold and incredibly selfish person who did not care about family loyalty or supporting my own sibling. Their unreasonable anger officially ignited a bitter Cold War within the household as they made their extreme displeasure known through endless silent treatments and daily glaring looks. Remembering the strict professional advice from my lawyer Marcus, who had previously forced me to include a property revocation clause in the house purchase contract, I decided it was finally time to establish rigid boundaries. I realized that my continuous financial support over the past few years had only bred deep entitlement instead of gratitude among the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. Consequently, I officially informed my parents and Shannon that I would no longer cover their luxury credit card expenses or supplement their daily living costs beyond the basic maintenance of the property itself. The decisive action of cutting off payments for all their unreasonable shopping bills was the first major shot that pushed our ongoing family conflict to its absolute peak. They genuinely believed they were completely entitled to my wealth simply because they raised me and shared my DNA. This necessary financial restriction caused them to view me as an enemy rather than a successful daughter who had already provided them with a beautiful home. Their absolute refusal to accept my reasonable financial limits confirmed that our relationship had been entirely transactional from the very beginning. I walked out of the house that afternoon, feeling an overwhelming sense of isolation despite knowing I had made the only responsible choice available to protect my own future. 2 months later, everything suddenly took a highly suspicious turn when my family began displaying some incredibly unusual financial behaviors that completely contradicted their previous desperate situation. Despite the undeniable fact that her cosmetics company generated absolutely zero revenue and remained drowning in massive corporate debt, Shannon unexpectedly began posting a continuous stream of extravagant updates across all her social media platforms. She proudly showcased the recent purchase of a brand new luxury vehicle alongside multiple photographs from highly expensive resort vacations, without demonstrating a single care in the world about her failing business obligations. My best friend Clara came over to visit my apartment that weekend to offer her emotional support while helping me deeply analyze the glaring financial inconsistencies in my family's new spending habits. Her comforting presence greatly soothed my deep sense of isolation after being completely boycotted by my own flesh and blood for simply protecting my personal wealth during our previous argument. Sitting across from me at the kitchen island with a highly serious expression on her face, she clearly voiced the exact suspicions that had been bothering my mind all morning. Do you not find this entire situation incredibly strange, considering her recent business failures and massive unpaid invoices? Clara asked while pointing directly at the flashy vacation photographs currently displaying on the glowing tablet screen. Someone standing on the absolute verge of complete bankruptcy cannot simply swipe a credit card to purchase a luxury sports car unless she suddenly stumbled upon a massive pile of money from thin air. So? I nodded in complete agreement because the strict mathematical reality of her newly acquired lavish lifestyle simply did not align with her disastrous business records or her lack of personal savings. I was just thinking the exact same thing while looking at those ridiculous internet posts. I replied with a growing sense of dread slowly settling in my stomach regarding their sudden wealth. I will immediately hire a professional to thoroughly investigate the hidden roots of this completely shady cash flow before things get completely out of hand and involve my own assets. Trusting my strong intuition that something terribly wrong was happening behind my back, I decided to secretly hire my private detective Victor to conduct a comprehensive financial investigation into the mysterious origins of the money Shannon was currently throwing around. I provided him with all the necessary background information regarding her failing company, alongside my parents' sudden change in financial behavior, so he could track every single transaction accurately without missing any crucial details. He assured me that financial records always leave a permanent digital trail that cannot be easily erased by arrogant individuals attempting to hide their sudden influx of questionable cash. After reviewing the initial preliminary data regarding their recent bank deposits, Victor strictly instructed me to maintain a completely normal attitude and avoid asking any probing questions so we would not accidentally alert them to our ongoing background investigation. By an incredibly convenient coincidence arriving just days later, my parents unexpectedly mailed me a formal invitation to attend their upcoming Christmas party being hosted at the very house I had originally purchased for them. The handwritten note tucked inside the festive envelope contained a highly uncharacteristic tone of fake reconciliation that immediately put me on high alert regarding their true underlying intentions. They falsely claimed they wanted to put our past financial disagreements firmly behind us so we could celebrate the upcoming holidays together as a happily reunited family. I ultimately decided to accept their highly suspicious party invitation to effectively maintain my safe cover while ensuring they remained completely oblivious to my strategic legal countermoves. Attending this festive gathering would seamlessly create the perfect psychological distraction to provide Victor with the crucial extra time he desperately needed to finish collecting the definitive evidence without arousing any unwanted suspicion or defensive reactions from my family members. 1 week before the upcoming Christmas holiday, the dark truth was finally exposed when Victor carefully placed a thick investigative folder directly onto the center of my wooden office desk. He sat across from me with a serious expression that immediately confirmed my worst suspicions regarding my family's sudden display of wealth over the past 2 months. The financial report contained within those pages brutally laid bare the reality that my parents had actively assisted Shannon in intentionally forging official property documents. They had maliciously worked together to completely remove the protective property revocation clause that I had originally attached to the deed of the house they were currently occupying. My supposed loved ones had recklessly utilized the residential property registered entirely under my legal name to secure a bank mortgage without ever seeking my explicit permission or providing any prior notification. They somehow managed to successfully bypass the standard verification procedures by submitting falsified paperwork to illegitimately borrow a staggering sum of $185,000 against an asset they did not actually own. Victor leaned forward slightly while pointing directly at a highlighted section of the fraudulent bank application containing an accurate copy of my handwriting. They forged your signature to completely remove the revocation clause so the mortgage loan worth $185,000 was successfully disbursed by the bank. I stared silently at the falsified documents in absolute disgust for a few moments before responding with a tone of cold determination that left absolutely no room for any further negotiation or discussion. It is absolutely unbelievable that they dared to intentionally violate federal law in such a blatant manner just to fund her extravagant lifestyle. Send this entire file to Marcus immediately because I want an emergency eviction order sitting ready on my desk by tomorrow morning. The banking statements clearly illustrated that the stolen funds were transferred straight into paying off Shannon's severely overdue credit card balances from her failing cosmetics venture. The remaining stolen capital continuously fueled her recently acquired spending habits by completely funding the luxury vehicle and those expensive resort vacations she had been proudly flaunting across the internet over the past few weeks. It became painfully obvious that my parents were perfectly willing to commit federal mortgage fraud just to maintain the false illusion of success for their absolute favorite child while completely destroying my financial security. Fully realizing that my parents' toxic favoritism had officially crossed the boundary from moral failure into the territory of serious financial crimes, I immediately forwarded the entire evidence portfolio to Marcus for swift legal prosecution. After receiving the shocking files, Marcus immediately confirmed that their brazen actions constituted a severe felony offense that would guarantee my total victory in any upcoming courtroom battle to reclaim my stolen assets. I could no longer offer any leniency to people who deliberately orchestrated a criminal conspiracy to rob me of my personal wealth just to satisfy their own selfish desires. The overwhelming sense of betrayal completely eradicated any lingering hesitation I might have previously held regarding their impending legal punishment and absolute removal from my life. Marcus and I consequently spent the next several days working tirelessly alongside his legal team to prepare an airtight emergency eviction order that would guarantee immediate execution upon receiving a signature of approval from the presiding judge. We strategically reviewed every single legal detail to ensure my family would have absolutely no legal loopholes or escape routes once the devastating reality of their criminal actions finally caught up with them during the holidays. He successfully presented the undeniable evidence of fraud to the court system to swiftly obtain the necessary legal documentation, granting me full authorization to reclaim my stolen property without any required warning period. We firmly agreed to utilize their upcoming fake reconciliation Christmas party as the perfect opportunity to completely expose their unforgivable deceit and permanently cut ties with the people who had shamelessly exploited my generosity. That weekend, an unexpected traffic accident across the main highway caused me to arrive exactly 1 hour late for the scheduled holiday gathering, while the surrounding streets of Omaha remained completely covered in a freezing silence. The moment my boots stepped onto the wooden porch of the property, I coincidentally overheard the exact same cruel toast originating from my parents, alongside Shannon's malicious additions, just like my earlier experience standing before the cracked door. Hearing their genuine laughter over my deliberate absence served as the absolute final straw that completely shattered any remaining illusions I held regarding our biological connection or their capacity for basic human decency. Their incredibly toxic sarcasm provided the ultimate confirmation that my family only wanted me to permanently disappear so they could successfully seize total control over my hard-earned financial assets without facing any legal interference. Instead of storming inside to confront their blatant hypocrisy in front of their invited audience, I immediately retreated to the quiet safety of my locked vehicle to contact Marcus regarding our prepared legal strategy. I needed to ensure everything was perfectly aligned with the local authorities before dropping the ultimate consequence onto their ongoing holiday celebration without providing them any opportunity to escape. Marcus answered the incoming phone call immediately with a highly serious tone to discuss the pending legal situation. The emergency eviction order has been officially approved by the presiding judge earlier today. Are you absolutely certain you want to execute this severe legal action right now during the freezing holiday night? I stared at the brightly lit windows of my stolen house while gripping the steering wheel with absolute certainty regarding my final decision. Execute the order immediately without any further delay, because their cruel party has officially reached its permanent end tonight. After terminating the brief phone call with Marcus, I sat silently behind the steering wheel, watching the shadows of the partygoers moving across the living room blinds, while waiting for the inevitable consequences of their criminal actions to finally arrive at their doorstep. There was no remaining guilt inside my heart because they had consciously chosen to commit federal mortgage fraud while treating my existence as nothing more than a convenient bank account to fund their extravagant desires. I felt a tremendous sense of relief knowing that the exhausting cycle of manipulation was finally coming to a definitive halt under the strict enforcement of local law. The official law enforcement officers arrived at the residential property within 30 minutes to rapidly enter the crowded house and forcefully interrupt the ongoing holiday festivities with unquestionable authority. They immediately cut off the loud audio system blaring through the living room before sternly ordering all the confused guests to disperse from the premises in a state of utter shock. The completely bewildered partygoers quickly scrambled toward their parked vehicles, while whispering among themselves about the sudden police presence abruptly terminating their free evening of drinking and celebrating. My family members loudly attempted to argue with the uniformed officers, but were swiftly shut down by the undeniable validity of the court documents bearing a legitimate judicial signature. Sitting completely silently inside my darkened vehicle parked safely across the quiet street, I carefully observed the chaotic eviction scene unfolding precisely according to my calculated legal strategy without missing a single crucial detail. I watched the armed police officers forcing my parents along with Shannon to hastily pack their essential personal belongings under strict continuous supervision. The strict law enforcement authorities provided the three of them with exactly 60 short minutes to completely vacate the residential property they had illegally leveraged for their own selfish financial gain. They eventually dragged their hastily packed suitcases out into the freezing winter night while looking incredibly desperate after officially losing the comfortable shelter I had originally provided for them. The heavy front door was finally locked shut by the authorities to officially conclude their prolonged period of financial exploitation and deceit. The following morning, the peaceful silence of my apartment was abruptly shattered when an overwhelming barrage of text messages continuously bombarded my cellular phone without any pause. The notifications pinged relentlessly against the wooden nightstand as I slowly realized that the consequences of last night had already begun flooding the internet. Demonstrating absolutely zero signs of genuine remorse for her previous criminal actions, Shannon immediately took to various popular social media platforms to aggressively play the innocent victim in front of her online followers. She published highly manipulative posts, blatantly twisting the objective truth by falsely claiming that I had heartlessly kicked our elderly parents out into the freezing winter streets. Her fabricated digital narrative quickly garnered significant attention from distant relatives, who began calling me constantly to express their misinformed outrage over my supposed cruelty. My parents decided to escalate their malicious retaliation even further by officially filing a severe legal complaint with the local Adult Protective Services Agency. They deliberately submitted false accusations claiming that I was currently experiencing a severe psychological breakdown in a desperate attempt to legally strip away my rightful control over my personal financial assets. A formal representative from the welfare agency arrived at my corporate office later that afternoon to conduct a mandatory investigation into my mental competency based on their ridiculous claims. She sat across my wooden desk with a highly serious expression to thoroughly explain the legal nature of her sudden presence during my busy working hours. We received an emergency report stating that you are currently showing signs of mental instability and are not mentally sound enough to properly manage your financial assets, the agency representative stated clearly. I calmly unlocked my desk drawer to retrieve my completely organized documents to firmly counter their malicious allegations without showing any signs of emotional distress. Here are my recent medical records alongside my fully transparent financial reports to prove my total competence. The truly unstable individuals are the ones actively trying to seize my personal assets by submitting this entirely fabricated report to your government office. Maintaining absolute composure throughout the entire official interview, I effortlessly provided the investigating agent with comprehensive health evaluations and pristine accounting ledgers that conclusively proved my complete mental competence. I also presented the digital communication logs proving that their ridiculous complaint was simply a retaliatory tactic designed to punish me for the legal eviction. My overwhelming mountain of undeniable physical proof caused their defamatory legal complaint to be officially dismissed on the spot without encountering any further bureaucratic difficulties or unnecessary delays. They foolishly thought they could manipulate the legal system to declare me incompetent to manage my wealth, but their reckless strategy completely failed against my solid preparations. Simultaneously, the massive public uproar my family had foolishly created across multiple social media channels accidentally captured the attention of the financial institution holding their illegitimate mortgage loan. The sudden digital spotlight prompted the highly cautious banking executives to initiate an immediate internal review regarding all the submitted legal paperwork associated with the recently mortgaged residential property. They assigned a specialized team of professional financial auditors to meticulously examine every single document that had been filed by my sister during the initial loan approval process several months ago. Marcus contacted me through a secure phone line shortly before dinner time to deliver some incredibly satisfying news regarding the rapid downfall of their fraudulent financial scheme. He confidently informed me that the banking investigators had already discovered the glaring signs of forged signatures embedded deeply within Shannon's submitted loan application documents. Because of this undeniable discovery of blatant financial deception, the financial institution was currently preparing the necessary legal procedures to completely freeze all of her associated bank accounts. This swift banking action effectively cut off her entire illegal cash flow, while officially triggering the beginning of a massive federal fraud investigation that would ensure she faced the maximum possible legal consequences for her deceitful actions. Exactly 1 week later, I ultimately decided to completely extinguish the rapidly escalating public relations nightmare by scheduling a formal press conference directly with several prominent local media outlets operating within the city. Instead of wasting my valuable time engaging in pointless online arguments across various social media platforms, I decisively released the hidden security camera footage capturing their incredibly cruel holiday toast. Distributing this undeniable audiovisual evidence to the attending journalists successfully exposed their true malicious faces while permanently destroying the fake victim narrative they had carefully constructed for the gullible internet audience. The crystal clear audio recording of them celebrating my absence provided the exact objective proof required to vindicate my extreme eviction decision without requiring any further emotional explanations from my legal team. I continuously maintained my strict professional composure while publicly exposing the entire fraudulent mortgage application portfolio directly to the flashing cameras of the assembled reporters inside the rented conference room. By presenting the undeniable banking documents containing the illegally forged signatures alongside the comprehensive detective report, I successfully transformed a petty family dispute into a highly publicized federal financial fraud case featuring absolutely irrefutable physical evidence. Almost immediately following the live television broadcast, public opinion completely flipped against my deceitful relatives as a massive wave of harsh online criticism was aggressively directed straight towards Shannon. The furious digital backlash quickly forced multiple crowdfunding platforms to permanently lock down the fraudulent fundraising accounts she had recently established to illegitimately collect legal defense donations from sympathetic internet strangers who finally realized they were being scammed by a verified financial criminal. Being completely pushed into an inescapable legal corner by the undeniable public evidence, my parents frantically arrived at my corporate parking lot later that afternoon to physically block my vehicle from leaving the premises. They desperately attempted to use pathetic crocodile tears while shifting the entire blame onto Shannon by claiming her criminal actions were simply the result of momentary youthful impulsiveness rather than calculated deception. Mom aggressively grabbed the handle of my car door with a highly distressed expression, while crying hysterically, in an obvious attempt to manipulate my emotions right in front of the surrounding office buildings. "Jenna, I am begging you to please withdraw the investigative files, because Shannon was just being momentarily foolish, and we are still a family after all." Mom pleaded loudly while attempting to maintain her tight physical grip on my vehicle. I stared at her tear-stained face with absolute emotional detachment before delivering my final unyielding response without raising my voice. Committing severe financial fraud for $185,000 is absolutely not simple foolishness because it is a severe federal crime. The strict legal system will aggressively handle the necessary punishments that our broken family ties obviously cannot resolve. I decisively pushed the heavy car door open and stepped securely inside my vehicle, while completely ignoring their continuous frantic apologies echoing across the empty concrete parking structure. I coldly declared through the lowered driver window that serious financial crimes could never be magically resolved by shedding manipulative tears in a corporate parking facility. The appropriate time for offering pathetic family apologies had officially expired forever, the exact moment they decided to illegally leverage my residential property behind my back. Without demonstrating a single ounce of hesitation or lingering guilt, I smoothly drove away from the corporate building to leave my parents standing completely alone on the cold pavement. I deliberately abandoned them in that empty lot to desperately face the inevitable legal consequences resulting from their disastrous decision to blindly enable a financial criminal at my personal expense. 3 months later, all the chaotic public noise finally concluded when I sat completely silently on the wooden bench inside the freezing courtroom while carefully listening to every single sworn statement originating from the presiding judge. The honorable judge meticulously reviewed the entire mountain of irrefutable banking evidence alongside the security footage before officially delivering an incredibly strict judicial sentence that permanently altered their futures forever. The court strictly mandated that Shannon must completely relinquish her personal freedom by serving a mandatory sentence inside a federal facility to properly answer for her severe financial deception. Furthermore, the final judicial order legally compelled her to provide absolute economic restitution to fully compensate the defrauded financial institution for the stolen $185,000 without any possibility of declaring bankruptcy to escape her obligations. Because of their direct supportive involvement in orchestrating the fraudulent mortgage application, my parents were left completely empty-handed after permanently losing the comfortable retirement home I had generously provided for them over the past few years. They are currently burdened with a massive mountain of overwhelming financial debt while struggling to survive in absolute social isolation because our entire extended family completely alienated them the exact moment their true malicious nature was publicly exposed on the local news. I confidently walked out of the heavy courthouse doors with an incredibly steady pace, while deliberately leaving behind their desperate, pleading looks, without offering a single glance of pity or forgiveness in their direction. Experiencing that completely toxic mess finally disappearing from my daily existence brought me an overwhelming sense of absolute freedom that I had never truly felt before in my entire life. Looking back at this entirely exhausting emotional ordeal, I deeply realized that offering blind tolerance to manipulative relatives only provides extremely fertile ground for their selfish greed to continuously grow and eventually destroy everything you have worked hard to build. The biological boundary of sharing the same bloodline should never serve as a permanent free pass to excuse deceitful behavior or justify blatant violations of federal law against the people who trusted you the most. Actively choosing to aggressively protect your hard-earned personal assets alongside your fundamental self-respect remains the absolute prerequisite for living a dignified life, with your head held high, regardless of whether your opponent happens to be your closest family member. Decisively severing those highly toxic relationships might initially feel incredibly painful during the immediate aftermath, but that difficult boundary enforcement actually represents the greatest possible salvation for securing a peaceful and prosperous future for yourself. I sincerely thank everyone who patiently listened to my difficult personal journey until the very final minutes of this video. Life always contains incredibly harsh truths, and standing up to aggressively protect yourself from your own relatives is never an easy task for anyone to accomplish. What do you honestly think about my decisive final choice regarding the permanent removal of my toxic family? Please leave a comment sharing your personal thoughts below, and do not forget to press the subscribe button to accompany us in the upcoming dramatic stories.